It's been billed as the gadget that will change the way we use computers. It's going to single-handedly save the publishing industry, and it's going to have a massive effect on social media and social gaming. It's the iPad, and we've got one. Well, we managed to get one by importing it from the States, and as you already know, in the UK, they're not going to go on sale to the end of May. Well, the cheapest version is 16 gigs of storage and wireless, and that comes in at £429. And if you want the all singing and dancing version, which has got 64 gigs of storage and a 3G connection, that's £700. But bear in mind, you have to pay a little bit of money to your mobile phone network as well on top of that for the data. So what do we think? Is this a gadget that matches the hype? Or is it something that people will put down in a few years' time as one of Apple's few mistakes? Right, so having had a chance to play with this for several weeks, I've got strong views on what I like and what I don't like. And the big thing I don't like is the fact that it doesn't play Flash. A lot of people make a big deal about this at the time, and it seemed quite not important. But one of the big things about the iPad is it's fantastic for video. I mean, YouTube looks great on it. Now just imagine the BBC iPlayer. Can you imagine using this, sitting in bed, watching programs on the iPlayer? It would be perfect. And the fact you can't get the iPlayer because of the limitations of Flash, and the fact that on a lot of websites there are big holes, is really, really annoying. The second thing I'm not completely convinced about is it's going to save the publishing industry. Sure, magazines look okay on this, and I've looked at Rolling Stone, New York Times, USA Today, lots of others, and it does feel quite interesting when you're kind of sampling content as you would a magazine but on a computer. But I just don't think people are going to go for this in the long run. I think the idea of the way they sample content via the web, picking stories from here and there, will basically mean that ultimately it won't work for magazines. And I think magazine publishers that are investing very, very heavily in this space need to be very careful about what they do. The thing that might work though is if they kind of add apps to their content, almost like they did in the 1990s when they gave away CD-ROMs that did interesting things. So if publishers can do something that adds something to their content, they might find that that works. Maybe even they'll be giving these away. Maybe at some point you'll get a subscription to Vogue or whatever, and as part of that subscription you'll be able to have this rather than getting the magazine. But as for mainstream magazines, I think we're a long way off seeing a real business model for how they can make money out of the iPad. So I've already mentioned that video as being one of the iPad's really good points. The other thing is social gaming. There are all sorts of cheap and cheesy games here, which like air hockey, which are absolutely fantastic. The kind of stuff you've had on the iPhone for a while, but when you're sitting on the sofa, it actually works so much better on the iPad. So gaming, especially gaming for kids, is going to be really big news on the iPad. The other thing I really, really like about it are websites. They actually look quite beautiful on here. Safari is a great browser, and it does actually kind of make the most of the images that they have on the screen, and the way you can flick through things and obviously use your finger to sort of navigate around is quite fantastic too. So ultimately though, I think the iPad is a device for the home. It's a device you'll sit and use when you're watching TV. It's a device you'll have in the kitchen when you may be baking something and kind of following a recipe. It's not something that I think is going to catch on trains and tubes. I think it's just too big for people to kind of carry them around. I can't really see it being much of a sort of e-reader. I think people will still be buying books rather than reading books on here. With a lot of Apple product, the first time they actually produce it, it's not always that great. The first iPhone wasn't great, With the iPad here, it's actually hardware is pretty good, but what's going to make this really, really special is if we see lots of really interesting apps. And it's really early days for the app market. I mean, at the moment, put your hand on your heart, you're probably going to get a lot more use out of a laptop, or you can do a lot more interesting things. But maybe as time goes by and we start seeing lots of really interesting and niche apps developed for this that uses its strengths like its touchscreen interface, that's when the iPad goes from being something that is a nice little thing to kind of have around your home to something that maybe starts to resemble the future of computing.